Karina, are you in here yet?
Yes, I'm here, and I just got everything all ready to go, and I did just make you co-host.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I will probably need a little assistance here and there, just so you know.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you.
Got it.
Okay, I have to ask, what are you eating? Yeah, take your time. Don't choke.
It's a chicken quesadilla.
It's what, a quesadilla? Wow. See, I swallowed my sandwich down offline.
I was trying.
All right.
Not a lot of time between these two today, huh?
Well, that was certainly a tasty lunch yesterday. My gosh.
Was good. I know. I had both kinds of those pasta too. It was really good.
Yeah. I told a few people who catered that, and they said, oh yeah, those guys are good.
Yeah, I particularly enjoyed the mushroom one.
Yes. Yes. Speaking of,
I came in at the very end of that, so I don't know what mushrooms we're talking about, but that was a previous committee meeting.
We're not talking about those mushrooms. Talking about our lunch yesterday from the downtown association.
yesterday's lunch.
Oh, the lunch yesterday left a pretty big impression on John.
Oh my gosh. I've told a lot of people about it.
They do a good job.
Oh my gosh.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jeff, how do you say your last name?
Gickelhorn.
Gickelhorn. Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I didn't butcher it too
Thank,
bad.
thank you.
My husband's last name is Quackenbush, so quite familiar with the, having to phonetically spell the last name.
I'm amazed at how many names or place names in the US are not pronounced as they are phonetically spelled.
Mhm.
My wife grew up in Wisconsin, went to school on the shores of Lake Superior, and there are a lot of names that Native American based names up there that she actually tested me when we first met to see if I could pronounce them properly, and I didn't get a single one.
Oh, wow.
There are a lot of those.
There are a lot of streets in Missoula that people don't pronounce correctly. So this is I think we just don't care to do it right.
Right. All right. Seeing as how it is 12:21, I am going to call the Climate Conservation and Parks Committee to order today. I'm standing in for Amber Sherrill, who is unable to be here today. This is the first committee I've ever led, so take it easy on me. I may stumble throughout. First thing is that we are still meeting remotely, and so I think the instructions for that are on the screen if you would care to join us, if the public would care to join us. And then, Karina, do we do roll call now? Karina, are you there?
Sorry, I'm here. My buttons got lost for a second. I apologize.
No worries.
Okay, let me go ahead and get roll call up and we'll get this going. Just one second.
Thank you.
Okay. Anderson.
Present.
Becerra.
Present.
Carlino. And I don't see Daniel. Contos.
Here.
Hess. And I don't see Jordan. Jones.
Yes.
Jordan.
Present.
Mike Nugent.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
Cheryl is absent. Vaseka,
Present.
West. And I don't see Heidi, but it looks like Daniel. So Carlino,
Thanks.
Yes, Daniel's joined us.
yep, he's here. Okay. All right, I think I got everybody so far. Hold on a second. And we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. I think we have minutes from our last committee meeting. Karina, what do I do with the minutes? Apologies.
No problem. You could just ask, are there any changes to the minutes as posted?
Are there any changes to the minutes as posted?
And seeing none, those minutes will stand as approved. That's what you'll say.
Okay, and seeing none, minutes will stand as approved. And then do we have any public comment for anything that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, I think we can move forward to our one item today with the staff presentation by Jeff Gickelhorn.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. For those that don't know me, I am Jeff Gickelhorn. I'm the Conservation Lands Manager for City of Missoula Parks and Recreation Department. I am bringing to you today a variance request for an encroachment into the Peary Park off of South Hills Drive. And I'm going to go through this very briefly. We have had two meetings with the Missoula Parks and Recreation Board last fall. Many meetings between myself, city legal, and legal representation for the homeowner. And what we are bringing to you today is a variance request based out of all of those conversations. So in the agenda, you have a very lengthy exhibit document that includes a lot of document discovery, an inventory of and documentation of the encroachment, as well as an actual property boundary survey documenting the exact extent of the encroachment and the proposed allowed extent, which is different from the current extent of the encroachment going forward. So in April of last year, we received notice from a nearby resident that access to Peary Park had been blocked. So on the north end of Peary Park, the park sort of runs down and touches South Hills Drive. The homeowner at that property had started landscaping over park property, had posted signs stating not a trail, and had actually sort of verbally confronted that individual who reported the issue to us. Upon inspection, we realized that there is a significant encroachment into Peary Park. Because we do not have survey capabilities in-house, could not ascertain the exact extent of the encroachment, but it appeared to me from on-site visit that a portion of the homeowner's driveway, possibly their deck, and certainly a lot of landscaping was on park property. In 2015, City Council adopted resolution number 8024, which set a zero tolerance policy for encroachments onto park property. This resolution was a result of many other issues in the past with other parks, specifically around Greeno, and issues with long-term encroachments there. This resolution states that the city will not tolerate encroachments. We know of many. It takes a long time to address them, and so it instructs the Parks Department to systematically work through identifying and addressing those encroachments. It also sets an approach for how we should notify individual homeowners, work with them to remediate those encroachments, or in specific instances to request a variance so that the homeowner can request a variance to the resolution. It also instructs that that variance should only be considered if there is direct public benefit as a result of issuing that variance. It also identifies a permit fee structure associated with issuing that encroachment permit. So all of that said, once we received notice that there was a potential encroachment, inventory that, we're able to work with the homeowner and get a property boundary survey, realize the significant extent of the encroachment, which was just over 2,100 square feet. We brought all of that information to Parks and Recreation Board. Again, they considered the item initially. They actually tabled it for a month, and we brought it back to them with further documentation. And very conveniently, as per stated in the resolution, we were able to find a comparable sort of per square foot value of similar land within less than a half mile of this individual property location. So as per the resolution, we have a sort of quote unquote fair market value of the land covered under the encroachment. And we're able to come up with a encroachment permit fee price that could then be presented to Parks and Recreation Board. So I'm going to share my screen here very quickly and talk about what was discussed and what was recommended from Parks and Recreation Board. So if you can see my screen, this is the property boundary survey that is included in the exhibits. You can see here, the home is located here. There's a detached garage. This detached garage was appropriately permitted. And in the attachment or in the exhibits, you can see the building permit. At the time of that building permit, on the building permit itself, there is stamped a paving permit required, where the driveway on the exhibit was supposed to come just to the property boundary and around the house to access the detached garage. The homeowner at that time, who is not the current homeowner, did not secure a paving permit. And it appears that at that time, a significant portion of concrete was poured onto park property. So you can see here that there is a portion of a wooden deck, a concrete driveway, a concrete stem wall here, or barrier wall, as well as a gravel parking pad. That totals to approximately 2,100 square feet. What Parks and Recreation Board recommended upon staff recommendation was to issue a variance request and encroachment permit for just the hardscape surfaces, which includes the concrete driveway, the edge of the concrete driveway, and the concrete barrier wall, but that the gravel parking pad would be removed, and that the fees associated with issuing this encroachment permit would go directly back into improving Peary Park all across the park. So the fees would stay with Peary Park, and the Parks Department would be able to use that to make improvements. So based on the, and again, you can see this in the exhibits as well as in the draft encroachment permit, but there is a calculation of current, this was back last fall, fair market value for the encroachment area. And I mentioned that recent comparable where Public Works had disposed of a very small property to an adjacent homeowner about a half mile south of the property in question. And that totaled to approximately $1.56 per square foot. Due to the increase in property values, that was about a year before this instance, that was increased approximately 30% to accommodate increased property values. And the overall sort of assessed value per square foot came out to $2.03 per square foot for a total permit fee as per the structure in the resolution for $3,140.63. Councilmember Jordan, you have a question.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure when the right time to ask the question is, but from what I'm hearing, it sounds like somebody built on park property and now we're selling it to them because they built on park property. Is that correct?
So, and I'm, in essence, yes. The homeowner that currently lives in the house is not the individual that owned the property when it was developed. And so that is actually, that exact reason is why Park Board tabled this discussion for a month, because they wanted to consider whether or not this would be appropriate.
Can I ask a follow-up, please?
Yes, Kristen, can you hold on for just 1 second? Can we let Jeff get through the presentation and then we'll do questions, council questions after the presentation? Thank you.
I'm very nearly done. So as you can see in the draft encroachment permit, the funds raised from the, maybe I'll back up. Parks and Recreation Board considered this and tabled it for a month for further discussion. And really felt that this could be precedent setting by issuing a variance, right? Rather than enforcing the resolution. But that the fact that right now, this is the only access to the person's property, even though it was improperly permitted and improperly constructed, that was sort of a reasonable middle ground. And again, after much discussion, 2 public meetings, comments from the homeowners legal counsel, who I believe has called in right now, and discussions with city legal, the draft encroachment permit that is included in the agenda is what was developed out of that. So with that, the request from the Parks Department is for council to consider and potentially issue the Parks encroachment permit or a variance to Resolution 8024, with the funds raised from that to be explicitly used for the further improvement of Peary Park. So with that, I will conclude and can take questions.
Okay, Kristen, do you want to go with your follow-up question?
Yeah, thank you. You kind of touched on it. I'm actually honestly shocked that we're considering this. I kind of feel like if I decided to put a little unit on my boulevard, then perhaps I could request a variance to then own that property. I'm surprised by this. Have we done this type of thing before? And I do hold on to that. Like, I do have serious concerns that we're setting precedent in this space. And I will note that it is in a neighborhood that tends to not have significant socioeconomic challenges. And I frankly don't understand. I don't understand this process at all. I mean, sorry, Jeff, I just am shocked by this. Honestly, I'm speechless by the fact that somebody built, wasn't the current homeowner's problem, but then we're now selling city property to a homeowner because somebody else built somewhere they weren't supposed to. I have significant concerns this sets a precedent that is really inequitable. But I guess that's just a comment. And then my question is how many other times have we done this in the past? Thank you.
I'm actually going to defer to Morgan, who is strangely here labeled as Donna. So for longer term context, my understanding is that under the current resolution, so Resolution 8024, we have not issued a variance.
Morgan,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I obviously stole Donna's link to this meeting. She wasn't able to make it, but to my knowledge, this has occurred. It's been very few and far between. I do know that, and it's not a park that Jeff or I manage, but Penland Park, which is also in the South Hills, had a very similar situation where we were able to see a negotiation for a portion of I believe in that it was very similar. It was either an access or a portion of a structure that was built into the park. I would say the biggest precedence is in Greeno Park. With Greeno Park in 1955, the Greeno family actually came forward and threatened to take the park back from the city due to mismanagement on behalf of the city. The city was able to negotiate a settlement, which resulted in 13 individual points by which the park would be managed. One of those points was to survey the entire park for encroachments. There was no funds allocated to that survey, and it took about 40 years to complete. Greeno Park was dedicated in 1902. A lot of that area, it was an incredibly complex survey to do. Just because so much of that area was developed long before we even had building codes. And we identified about 25 separate encroachments, some of which were people's physical homes, and did provide variances for a lot of those locations through a permit that is actually every time the property sells, it triggers the new property owner has to re-up the permit. And at that time, there's an assessment to see whether or not some of it is just fences versus houses. We did a similar thing at the base of Mount Jumbo, probably 12 years ago, where someone was realized that a portion of their back garage was built on city right-of-way, an old abandoned right-of-way on Jumbo. And so we allowed a temporary construction easement and allowed that building to stay in place. It was a historic 1910 carriage house. And so it has happened. It is very much few and far between. After the Greeno Park example, and as we move forward to try to resolve that with 25 separate homeowners with various, some of which had people's houses in the park, that's when council passed the current resolution, which is basically a zero tolerance moving here on forward. I think in Greeno, that was a situation where some of those encroachments, I mean, there'd been 5 or 6 different land homeowners that had changed hands over the period of the 100 years that the house would be there. So this would not be a precedent. It would be the first time that we've issued a variance post the, I believe it's 2015 resolution that council passed recommending zero tolerance.
Thank you, Morgan. It looks like we have a lot of council questions. So just remember, we have about 10 minutes left allocated to this meeting. So next person I saw was John Conta.
Thank you. I think it's really nice of you guys to do something like this. I know legally you could probably have that stuff removed. It's just a little unfair that the current homeowners are faced with this. It almost seems like it could be some legal issue with the title company that didn't catch this. But just a comment saying, yeah, I think you guys are doing the right thing. That's great. Thanks.
If I could just add one quick thing to that, John, and I think you hit on something as well, where we have made this variance before is certainly not where we have key parkland. This is a small, narrow trail access that gets off the end of a cul-de-sac. And we feel that we can still accommodate that trail and that public access to get to the park. This is I think it's a 15-foot, or correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, 20-foot wide, narrow access that just gets people from the street into the larger 15-acre park. So in this case, we felt that it could be justified. Yeah.
The property is right here. And all of this, sorry, this is a complicated map. All of the red is city property. This is all Peary Park here. And so there is space for continued public access. And what we have proposed is actually improving neighborhood access by constructing a trail to connect South Hills Drive and several other cul-de-sacs to the main portion of the park.
Thank you. And remember, we are on council questions right now, not council comments. So next person, Mike Nugent.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Has anybody from planning looked back to say whether or not proper protocol in 1998 or whenever this was approved originally, which would have required verifying access? You mentioned that there was no paving permit pulled, so they didn't know it was a problem, but they're building a garage in the back of, or they built a garage in the back of the lot. And it frankly shocks me that city planning went to verify that there was access before approving a shop.
So yes, there was document discovery. I can pull that up. It is in the exhibit. It's very challenging to read because it's a microfiche scan. But you can see the document as shown. It does not show a deck in place. and in place shows the driveway coming straight to the property boundary. I personally can't speak to planning's mindset at that time. Again, you can see it here showing the extent of the driveway. This is city parkland boundary here. And very clearly stamped is that a paving permit was required. That was not pulled. So I can't speak to what happened at that point, but the situation is such that 2,100 square feet of encroachment ended up on city parkland.
Great. Follow-up?
Go ahead.
In the process of the current homeowner applying for this, was it discussed whether or not the fact that the driveway was not on their lot disclosed to them, or were they under the impression that they owned all the way to the fence that they were topsoiling to?
Right. So I believe that Susan Auberg is on as well. Basically, I was instructed not to request a title report, for example. Whether or not the homeowner knew about it or did not, I shouldn't sort of influence the zero tolerance or the consideration of the current encroachment, if that makes sense. So, and I'm not sure if that directly addresses your question.
Well, it does address my question, and I'm not sure that it shouldn't impact the zero tolerance, but I know that in 2012, title insurance included plat maps, and the plat map clearly shows that there's a space between this house and the neighboring house. So I think that's relevant to the conversation, but you might not have the information to answer it. So
that is correct. And I would assume so as well, but we were not able to ascertain that.
Thanks.
All right, Miss Anderson.
Thanks so much. I guess I have a couple questions and I'll try to make them quick if the chair will allow. The first question I have is in comparison to the Greeno situation, it sounds like permits have to be renewed. This, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, is a one-time sale for the allotted stated price.
That is correct. The way that the resolution is written, it essentially, it's a permanent encroachment permit, does not actually sell the property. So if there's a difference there. It's still city property. With the way I read it as a lifetime encroachment permit, that cannot be altered. You cannot construct a building on that encroachment area. It can only be managed, and this is stated in the draft permit, as a driveway, right? So what was there now can be maintained. It cannot be expanded or modified in any way. So, but yes, my understanding is that it becomes lifetime.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
So I guess the difference between a not selling it and therefore then therefore stops them from being able to do anything different than what is currently there. Whereas if we sold it to them, then they can do whatever they want.
That is correct. Also, this gets recorded at the county so that anytime this property were to change hands in the future, it is recorded that there is an encroachment and it can only be managed as such. Without that in place, or for example, if the property were to be sold, quote unquote, then that would increase this individual's or the homeowner's lot size and therefore home value.
Thank you. One more question, Madam Chair.
Yep.
It's my ward. So it sounds like you in your office have had to do quite a bit of work to sort of get to this point. You referenced the fact that we don't have surveying capabilities, so we had to get all that. I'm curious on why it is that that additional, incurred fees or outside services that were needed is not assessed as well. I mean, I agree with Ms. Jordan. This does seem fairly like $3,000 given what they're doing and is a pretty nominal amount of money. And I'm wondering why there wasn't like a fine also assessed on to cover the city's costs,
right.
Recuperation.
So I will say that the homeowner paid for the property boundary survey, which was basically they thought that they were sort of in the right and paid for the property boundary survey. So the city did not. there has already been assessed a $450, I think it's a variance permit request fee as stated in the resolution, which is intended as direct cost recovery for staff time. I will say I have certainly spent more than that amount of time or that amount of salary on this project, but that does allow for some cost recovery that has already been collected.
And I'm sorry, may I have one more question? I know, throwing the day off. So I guess from, I rarely don't agree with what staff is presenting, but my question is, what is our, what if the majority of us do not agree that this is the best course of action, then where does that leave things?
I'm not sure that I can necessarily speak to that. Certainly there are several options here. One being to not issue a variance request and basically force the homeowner to tear out the infrastructure at their cost as stated in the resolution. To issue a variance permit request, which would allow for what has been proposed, or potentially the full 2,100 square feet, which is a larger encroachment. That includes that gravel parking pad that we are proposing to remove. As it relates to addressing the resolution, I personally can't speak to that. This was put in place, again, after the Greeno situation, as Morgan referenced.
I have more questions, but I will stop asking.
Ms. Jones.
I was going to say, I think that the time, well, I think we're supposed to be finishing this committee now. And maybe this needs to be held over because it is complicated. I had some questions also, but it looks like we're not going to wrap it up. So I will not ask my question. I'll defer to the chair, but there you go.
It does seem that we have a lot of other questions on the table, and we have, now is when we're supposed to be done with this. I also would like to note that I think the attorney for the property owner is on the call and would probably like to speak to some of these things as well. So procedurally, Ms. Jones, do I just ask that we hold this over, or?
Right, so we could probably take a few minutes if the attorney does want to speak, since they have been waiting patiently, and then this is simply kept in committee and will be probably scheduled in the next week or two based on our schedule. I assume this is not too time sensitive. It's been going on for decades, so here we are.
That is correct.
So the person who's calling in with the last digit 664, are you the attorney for the homeowner?
I am. Can the committee hear me okay?
We can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. My name is Dwight Schulte. I am the attorney for the homeowner. I appreciate the committee taking the time to hear this today. I certainly understand holding it over until next week or the week after. The issues that brought this before the city are more complex than just an encroachment on city property. You guys have seen the building permit that potentially put the city on notice of this encroachment back when it was built. Again, not by this homeowner. The prior owner constructed the home. And Jeff has done a great job of trying to find the paving permit. We've been unable to find one, but that doesn't necessarily mean that one wasn't issued. So when the current property owners purchased this property, this encroachment was not disclosed, and it was not contained in the title commitment because there's a survey exception that says, we aren't going to insure anything that could have been found if a survey was done on the property. A survey was not done until this issue came before the city that was paid for by the property owners. And there's just kind of a slew of issues outside of just the encroachment that helps support doing this variance for this permanent structure and the access that's needed for this house.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I do think Ms. Jordan and Mr. Nugent, do you want to speak today, or can you hold your questions until next week and we can hold this over?
I have one question for the attorney and we can hold it over.
Okay, go for it.
Thanks for being here, Ms. Schulte. I appreciate it. There's no survey in title reports, but there are plat maps, and in 2012, there likely would have been a plat map for this subdivision. Does your client still have records of that being shared from the title company? And I ask because it's clear from the placement of the topsoil that they thought they owned the land all the way to the neighbor, and a plat map would have showed that they don't.
So I can address that. I don't know that they thought they owned that land. They thought it was communal area only for the subdivision. There's one of the myriad of issues we've identified is that it appears Peary Park has never been actually transferred to the city of Missoula. So what they did is started to try and maintain it as their yard, and they didn't think it was actually a public park. They were mistaken in that belief. They understand that, you know, they cannot maintain that land anymore, but that's kind of how this whole situation started, is when they planted grass there.
All right. Thanks. I'll have more questions next time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I will not be Madam Chair in the next Climate Conservation Committee meeting. So Karina, can we hold this item to the next committee meeting?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. So with that, I think we can call this committee meeting adjourned, and I will see you all in the next Public Works and Mobility Committee meeting in just a few short minutes.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.